I had to spin the block on this pod. We had such a great conversation the last time, and I feel like this one is going to be a little better because we're going to dive a little deeper into what we discussed.
Life as a therapist is always interesting.
Good evening.
It's a lot of the same work, but a lot of different cases,
Yep.
a lot of different people, a lot of different emotions. It's an exciting job, but man, it could be toxic.
Well, that's not like saying, babe, I broke, I need you to like lend me $50.
Why you
something
mind
like
when
that.
you broke?
No, because I'm just saying,
I
like,
talk about being open and honest.
just be open and honest.
It's like cultural terraforming. Like we literally are trying to figure out what does our culture look like, because we only know what we come from. And to some degree, we need an element of what we come from to be present in our marriage, to feel like this is a good reflection of me. A lot of times for women, the validation is all that's needed to create peace.
Absolutely.
And men skip out on that step because it's like, well, what am I validating this thing for that I don't fully believe in? I call it the art of second place. When I can fight for second place, that means first place is reserved for you. So you don't feel like you got to fight to prove things to me. Value determines inconvenience. So if I say that this thing is valuable to me, I have to be able to demonstrate where I'm being inconvenienced by it. You don't break generational curses by hoping I'm not faced with the same thing. You break generational curses by training yourself to know what am I going to do when that time comes.
All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome. This is a new episode of the Miles High Podcast. As always, the vision and goal of this podcast is to entertain, educate, and elevate you miles high above your fears, your doubts, and any limitations you may think exist, always knowing that those limitations only exist in your mind. All right, so today we have a special pod, a great pod. I was looking forward to this pod from the last year the last time that we parted together. You'll get a better sense of that when I introduce my guest for the day. So I had to spin the block on this pod. We had such a great conversation the last time, and I feel like this one is going to be a little better because we're going to dive a little deeper into what we discussed in the last pod. So without further ado, I want to welcome Mr. Harrison Thompson back to the pod.
Yes, sir.
Welcome back, bro. Welcome back.
Feel good, man. Feel good.
No, thank you for agreeing to join again.
Of course.
I think we had such a great conversation the last time, especially, giving a little insight into what men experience in relationships, right? And the things that we're able to reveal, aren't able to reveal, are maybe a bit afraid to reveal and whatnot. And those are the things I want to dive into a bit more today. So we had a very in-depth conversation, right? Yeah. We touched on a lot of areas. And I wanted to kind of, spin back around and dive a little deeper into a few of those areas, if you don't mind.
Sound good to me, bro.
All right, man. So first of all, how are you today?
I'm good. Life as a therapist is always interesting.
Good evening.
It's a lot of the same work, but a lot of different cases,
Yep.
A lot of different people, a lot of different emotions. It's an exciting job, but man, it could be toxic.
Yeah.
Really trying to prioritize self-care this year. Getting my massages, making sure I'm in bed by 10. I ain't do it yet, but we heading there, bro.
Got you. All right. So let me ask you this. So when you first started out in this industry, or like just on the journey that you're on, did you always wanted to be a behavioral therapist?
I didn't know that this is what I wanted to do.
Okay.
Because I initially started off in law, actually. And
I remember that from
watching Law and Order, I'm like, man, these people are really hands-on with folks. But then in doing law and recognizing the amount of sheer reading I have to do and the space between me and people, I wasn't happy with that.
Okay.
But I like the part of law where it's like we're understanding the psychology of people, why people are doing what they're doing. And it just so happens my father being a clinical psychologist right under my nose, I was able to kind of leverage that because the interest was there now. Before it was just him doing his thing. But now it's kind of like, can I see myself doing this?
And that's like 5-10 years into the future. Like where do you see your business going?
Yeah, so I want relationship management to be the premier hub for mental health awareness in the Bahamas. I want to kind of bring on young folks who are coming out of psychology and you being abroad who actually want to come back home and service their people, because there's not all the places that we can do that and actually be effective in doing so. So one of my biggest visions is empowerment. After empowerment, I kind of want to get onto a bigger scene and maybe do more public speaking on things regarding relationships, self-development. So I got some things in order. I'm just hoping that the timing shows up and the opportunity shows up and the team kind of can be what I need it to be to carry that vision to it.
And you're happy like where you're at now and where you see yourself in the future, or like would you have liked to be much further along now?
Bro, if I be honest with you, I did not expect for people to show me this much of a favorable response regarding therapy and mental health. Because, initially it was like, how am I going to get clients? And now it's literally, how am I going to find time for myself and my family, bro?
Because it's too much clients.
Yeah. Wow. I think DJ Khaled had an album, right, where he labeled it Suffering from Success.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I kind of get that. Not trying to be arrogant about it.
Yep.
You pray for days like this, literally. And here comes that prayer. And now it's the reality of what it means on the other side of getting what you want.
And how do you balance that now? Like how do you go about like balancing, okay, I have this plethora of clients that are coming on and I asked for this, right? But now I got to make sure I paying attention to my wife and my kids.
Bro, it's a weird space because me saying no to a client, right? Just hypothetically speaking, me saying no to a client could likely turn into that client not getting what it is they need for a particular weekend. God forbid something happens on Monday and I'm hearing like, wow, that client really needed help. And I told them no so I could like be home and watch cartoons or be home and get sleep or be home and play with my daughter. But it was understanding like I can't be the therapist people need me to be if I'm not doing what I need to be doing to show up at 100%. So I literally had to view it through the eyes of, I'm telling you no today so I can tell you yes tomorrow, if that makes sense. I wrestle with the guilt. Yeah. I was kind of like, these people are depending on me to literally help and guide them through what they're going through. And I'm telling them no. Like, how terrible of a person am I? But then I realized, no, Harrison, you're helping. You're not in charge of salvation. I think there was a guy who already came to earth and did that for us.
Yeah.
So I ain't trying to repeat that if I don't have to.
Yeah. And what's your client complement like? What percentage is male versus female?
Right now it's still
man versus woman. I don't know what's politically correct nowadays, but
bro, it's a lot. Regarding women though, they still are kind of leading the way regarding like the relational side of therapy. But men are starting to pick up regarding personal development.
Oh, that's good.
So I'm seeing a lot more men coming in. They want to deal with their anxieties. They want to deal with their impacted self-esteem. They want to make sure that they can be the husbands they need to be for their future wives. So I'm happy to see that.
And they do that on their own merit, or is it like they have a big issue that they're trying to solve and they just like kind of backpedal their way into like, therapy? Or is it like, I'm making a conscious effort that, man, this seems like something that I should do and I want to get a couple of sessions with you?
Well, you know how we are, right? We're a little stubborn. Sometimes we're a little set in our ways. And a lot of times men end up in my office after something already took place.
That's true.
After they got caught, after, things go to hell. Yep. And then they show up. But I'm trying to get men to see like, listen, before it gets to that point, let's see if we could be a little preventative with this. And that's been a work in progress. Trying to show men the value of therapy before the emotional sensation of needing it shows up. That's difficult because men, we simple. We don't like to waste energy. We don't like to waste money. This have to make logical sense. And if it ain't making logical sense, what are you doing it for? So still working on kind of generating that awareness to help men get ahead of the curve.
What's the percentage jump with men from like when you first started to what it is now? Like, the clients that you see.
Yeah, like off the dome kind of percentages. I want to say something in the ballpark of like 20% men, and now we up to like maybe 35.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big jump.
Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, that's good to know though, because we are in a more like mental health conscious era.
Exactly.
Right? And the fact that men are becoming more comfortable talking about like their emotions and their mental health, I think it's important. And I think having conversations like this, right, opens the door for men who may have never thought about it or was thinking about it and just didn't pull the trigger yet.
Facts.
for them to encourage them to, hey, let's explore this avenue.
Yeah. COVID, I think, helped with that a little bit too.
Mm-hmm.
We were forced to kind of come face to face with some things that were being hidden behind escapism, behind work, behind traveling, behind linking up with friends. So COVID was a terrible thing, but it showed us a lot that we have to now be accountable to.
Yeah. I think COVID opened the door for men to really understand their happiness in, well, let me say married men, understand who they were and how they showed up in their marriages, right?
It's good.
Because a lot of the times, like, when you going about your day in the world and, going to work, coming home, you have kind of a routine to where now the routine is cut off and you get home with your family all day. Like, you get a realization of, I really ain't happy in this relationship or happy about this family. And, I think, I haven't looked at the numbers recently, but, divorce rates coming out of COVID was high.
Very.
And I think it speaks directly to, like you say, this escapism mentality that men especially have, where, I try to avoid talking to the wife or dealing with the kids, so I spend more time at work or with some friends after work or, whatever the case. So,
right.
I think it's good that we could at least start to have this conversation.
Yeah, man. It was necessary, man, because, like we talked about in the last link up me and you had, it's easy for men to operate without needing to be happy in doing so. And many times we get lost in that. We get so lost in it, we forget, like, this is still something I should be aiming for. And so why wait until it all falls down to really start prioritizing happiness when you can make that a normal part of your day, a normal part of your routine, a normal part of your communications?
I'm glad you started there, right? Because me and so before this part, I was talking to the wife of what what we was going to talk about, and I mentioned that exact thing.
Okay.
And she was like, so I was like, because men do things. Men don't do things. Men do things even if they aren't happy. And her first response was, "You don't do that. What you was doing you ain't happy or whatever, right?" And I was like, "No."
My defense, I meant you only do things that make you happy.
I understand. You further explain yourself. Yes. But I was telling her, like,
you don't sacrifice your happiness.
We took right, and that's what I kind of brought it home to. Right, I'm like, no, I focus on my happiness so that I can avoid, like, doing things when I'm not happy.
Right.
And I think, like, that's kind of like, I'm glad you started there, because, like, the one of the points of I want me inviting you to come back is for us to have a deeper conversation into what we had in our previous episode, right? And one of the things you mentioned was just that, like, men do things unhappy, and that has a lot to do with the strategic, being strategically weak. That this mentality that this concept that you termed or you mentioned,
right?
And it stuck out to me because, men are expected to be the strength of relationships in business, some friendships, right? We carry this burden of trying to be the stronger individual, and ignore our weaknesses, ignore our happiness. Like, our focus is, I have to be strong, right? And how do we combat the struggle that men feel internally in trying to be or being strategically weak? Like, so let's dive a little deeper into, like, exactly what that is. Let's remind the audience or the new audience who is listening to this or watching this. Let's talk about being strategically weak, and then ways that men can either, like, do that in a better context, or just learn the concepts of, like, what that really is.
Yeah, I think because the paradigm has it framed in such a way where we view things like being emotional as weakness. I wanted to use that because it already existed to say, well, let's learn how to be strategically weak. Let's learn how to lean into that emotionality as a choice, more so than having to deal with that emotionality because I can no longer hold it back. Many times men are working against that internal force, which is like, I'm depressed, but I cannot show that. Or I'm worried about money, but I cannot show that. And the nuances of being told it's a safe space to say these things, oftentimes we feel isn't something we can fully trust, because we know that information I give, that's going to impact the person I'm saying it to. Like, we married men. A lot of times my wife would present to me, let's just say she wants me to keep it real with something, like, be honest with me. And in my head, right, I'm like,
That
okay,
means something totally
should I really be honest here, or should I now be very strategic in what I say for the next iteration of what this conversation may lead to, right? Because my wife depends on me for stability. So if her man ain't good, the provider of that stability, I can only imagine how that's going to affect her headspace. You know, this is just me thinking as a man.
Yep.
But I recognize to some degree she needs to be let in on the truth of what's going on. And so here comes the timing of things. And this is why I talk about being strategically weak, because there's a time for that. I'm not just imploring men to just cry every day and to just become victims to what they're going through.
Yeah.
But there's a time when that's necessary. There's a time when we have to show our wives and we have to show our community, like, listen, I'm in the same position as you, going through the same things you're going through, bro. I want you to be able to look at me in my pain, but then to also watch how I navigate this thing in a healthy way that we may not always be used to.
So what's a good time to be strategically weak then? Or is there no good time? You just got to pick like your spots.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like a universally good time, say like Thursdays at 6. But it's kind of like that communication where it's like, babe, you know, we have a day when we tap in with each other, where this is a safe space for us to come and be real about what we endured this week. So that usually falls on like a Sunday. Sunday is like a good reflective day for people to kind of look back on some things and say, listen, man, this week did some stuff to me. So it's not necessarily that I'm just lying throughout the week, but I'm wanting to make sure that what I express to my wife is really what I mean. Because I don't want to say something to her and that affects her, and then I have to come back and say that's not what I meant. Because now that woman is going to feel like she don't know what to believe.
Like, you know what? I understand that, you know, because like for me, I am naturally an open person, right? So if I'm comfortable around you, I don't have a problem like being open and honest, right? I think for the most part, with men and relationship, like my wife and I, so because I'm open, I would have these like open conversations with her. So when I first started to have these open conversations with her, like I'll let her speak for herself, but to me, like her physical expressions was like she was a bit weirded out. Like why you having these conversations with me? Why you getting this deep? Why we talking like this right now?
My recollection is different.
Go ahead.
I don't recall that because I encourage you to be open and honest.
But yeah, I think it was like certain things I would be open and honest about though. Just like my spirituality.
That's different though, because if it's different because if you come we come from different types of.
But that's what I'm saying though. That's what I'm.
Well, that's not like saying, babe, I broke. I need you to like lend me $50.
Why am I when I broke?
No, because I'm just saying.
I talk about being open and honest.
Just being open and honest. Like is like you. Well, but from the beginning, we always had a different spiritual walk because of how you grew up, how I grew up. I'm more structured in my religion because of how I grew up. So like the things that you would tell me, I'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
But then over the years, because you brought me into the fold and I started to study and understand that
Right. So with that, right, I would say things or say how I feel, like, emotionally from a spiritual standpoint, and it would just be like, what? Like, why are you saying this? Why? So like finding spots to be like, all right, I want to have this conversation with Therese. And part of it was I want to start having this conversation so she get used to them, because I need to have these types of conversation. Right. So instead of looking at her reaction and being like, I having a conversation no more because her reaction discourages me, I would prefer to lean in and be like, okay, even though this may look uncomfortable for her and make me feel uncomfortable because of how she looks, I want to lean into it and push past this, right? And try to get to a point where she could be comfortable with me having a conversation. I'm comfortable having a conversation, so we could both have that conversation together.
Yeah, man, it's like cultural terraforming. Like we literally are trying to figure out what does our culture look like, because we only know where we come from. And to some degree, we need an element of what we come from to be present in our marriage, to feel like this is a good reflection of me. But we have to be managed in the sense that we can't bring everything over. Like there's some things that never existed before me and this person got together. And I think a lot of people judge differences as wrong instead of understanding that differences are just that. They're different. Yeah. And I think that's one of the primary struggles for men. It's like when our women don't reflect our thinking, right? Or when they don't return our logic, we immediately start to look at their emotionality as wrong.
Mm.
And so we start to demonize that as, okay, well, you freaking yourself out, you doing too much. Like, why you just don't relax? Like, look at me. Like, you ain't see me freaking out. And I think that's because, well, we're coming from, if I use a coin, one person coming from heads, one person coming from tails.
Mm.
And we're trying to converge in the middle.
Mm.
And in order for us to converge in the middle, we have to create that environment where it's okay for us to be what we need to be, to get things off of our chests, to vent, to kind of understand where we are in our world before we can ever present that to each other. So imagine a space where we can't do that, where the process I have to go through to understand what I need to say, to understand what I feel, that's the problem. Now you start seeing why marriages are falling apart, because we're doing that with people we shouldn't be doing it with.
Right.
We choosing friends and strangers and all kinds of other things instead of creating that environment, which is uncomfortable.
I was about to say, so how, but that uncomfortability could make it difficult though. Like, I think just being the type of person that I am to push past that discomfort, you know, it worked out for me. But, you know, most men wouldn't spend the time in working out that uncomfortability, right? They'd be like, bro, I just don't feel comfortable, so I ain't gonna do it.
But you know what's strange? We do this almost every day in the gym. Like, you know that for me, like 2 plates was that point of fear for me for the longest. I just did not want to do that because I had this fear like I was going to decapitate myself, right? It's like logically I know I could probably move that way. But if I don't learn to push through the discomfort of that lactic acid, if I don't learn to push through that psychological barrier that's telling me I can't do it, I'll never get to see what's on the other side. So I think the framework that makes that difficult for men is we assign negativity to discomfort. And that's not always correct, right? It's just uncomfortable. And I think I may have mentioned this in the last time we linked up, but we don't want to look at discomfort as the thing we need to fight, right? Discomfort is just the indicator of why this is here, and we need to figure that out together. So real courage is learning how can we both stay present in what is uncomfortable long enough until we figure out the solution, so that when we come back around to this problem,
It's easier.
it's easier to navigate the space. That's what we're really doing in marriage.
Or you have because going back to your gym analogy, right?
Right.
You ain't sure if you could push this weight, so okay, let me try it today. And then you're trying it, you realize, oh, okay, I can gauge now like where I'm at to what I need, or the energy I need to exert to push this weight, or
Really?
how tired I know I am right now versus tomorrow when I'm doing this again, saying, okay, I think I'm more tired than yesterday. I can play with this weight, or I feel better than yesterday. I know I could do a little better, you know? So just using that experience or that try, right? That pushing past the discomfort to gauge it better for the next time around.
And you know, we ain't dissing nobody, right? No. You know, we all know people who've been working out for like years. And it's like, bro, you look the same? Like, what's going on here? Like, you really allowing yourself to be defined by fear, and it's being supported by familiarity. And it's like, maybe I came from a family where this is familiar to do, where we don't talk about that elephant in the room. Like, we just let that kind of evaporate on its own. But it's like that mental work of literally having to acknowledge that elephant, and then watching my wife respond to me acknowledging that elephant. Her figuring out her relationship to that elephant, me figuring out my relationship to that. That ain't easy work, bro. But because I think we have developed an unhealthy relationship with vulnerability, we try to minimize our time in that instead of spending the appropriate amount of time in that to really get the results we're looking for.
Boy, I like that. I like, you know, people, and you're right? People look at being uncomfortable as a negative, or pushing past the discomfort as a negative. But I think the focus, if we shift it and shift the mindset to say, hey, let me figure out why, you know, this is the level of discomfort that I feel, and figure out, okay, how can I get past this or move past this? And then the discomfort could be an obsolete point. I want to introduce you to the Monroe Global app, the ultimate platform to empower your leadership journey and inspire your purpose-filled life. Access timeless teachings designed to help you grow in every area of your life. From leadership development to personal growth, Monroe Global has it all at your fingertips. With the Monroe Global app, you'll have exclusive access to powerful videos and messages from the legendary Dr. Miles Monroe, a digital library packed with life-changing content right at your fingertips, and a vibrant global community of visionaries, leaders, and change makers just like you. Whether you're at home, on the go, or in the office, the Monroe Global app ensures you never miss an opportunity to learn, grow, and lead. Available now on Google Play and the Apple App Store, the Monroe Global app is your gateway to unlocking your potential and impacting your world. Download the Monroe Global app today and take the first steps toward living the life you were born to lead.
And you know, it's very triggering for us who are logically dominated, right? Mm-hmm. And I say that because some women out there are logically dominated. Mm-hmm. But I really mean that to say for men. Logic is the fastest way out of discomfort. Mm. It's the shortest route between where you are and the exit, all right? So when we think logically, how little time can I spend listening to this person rap a lot? Like, what you want, babe? Like, if you want chicken, let me know you want chicken. Yeah. If you want steak, let me know you want steak. You want to eat out? What we doing, right? Logic. It's the fastest way out. But the fastest way out is not always the best way out, right? Because logic many times can make our wives feel like they're being dismissed. And so when women actually bring that up, we misinterpret that as, well, you don't see what I'm doing. Like how you could say I don't care about you, or how you could say I don't love you, how you could say I don't be thinking about you, when it's like, literally that's her experience. A lot of times we miss things being so logically dominated. And as men, I think we can learn a lot from being a little bit more present, understanding that we don't always have to know the next move to be doing the right things. Like sometimes it's okay if we go to bed with that problem unresolved, but we at least need to figure out the direction.
There's all these therapists who talk about, oh, don't go to bed up. I mean, don't go to bed, man. Like, no, bro.
We live in a real world.
I try to tell you, go to bed, man, bro. Let's talk about this in the morning. You know what I mean? Now, I ain't saying, like, be mad and make the wrong decision and go up there and do something stupid.
Yeah.
Right? But just be like, look, we ain't really moving past this tonight. It's okay for us to sleep on this and come out this tomorrow morning.
Honestly, bro, you know my big back, right? I be trying to like not look at my wife's direction in the bed and my foot touching her foot, and it's like, man, it really ain't no way to get around this. So because we inhabit the same space, we understand it's okay when we're not always getting along, but the respect is, here's how we navigate. And me and her don't violate that, right? Like you could be angry, you could be moody, but the non-negotiable thing is what we doing in relation to this, right? So you could be angry, but don't curse at me. You know, I could be angry, but I need to come home. You know, and I think once we learn that the principle governs our actions, then we put ourselves in a better position to solve it tomorrow.
I know you want to say something. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, you know, most women operate from a place of emotionality, if that's a word. Man logical, of course. But people like me, women like me, who cannot go to bed unless something is resolved because we have anxiety, and then we start thinking of all the worst possible things. What are we to do? I mean, although I have learned through our relationship that, you know, you just got to be okay with not being okay in that moment because it's not the end of the world. Like, go to sleep, watch some TV, scroll on your phone, and, you know, take your mind off it. But for women who just can't grasp that, what do they do?
But that's so powerful, Sharice, because I think a lot of times for women, the validation is all that's needed to create peace.
Absolutely.
And men skip out on that step because it's like, well, what I validating this thing for that I don't fully believe it? Like if I validate her in this emotionality, the male fears that I'm encouraging this kind of behavior. But what you're doing is you're actually helping that woman to release what it is she can't release herself from, right? Because I don't know if I mentioned this analogy in the last podcast episode, but women have one room, and that room ain't got no shelves, bro. So everything going on in that woman's life is an eyesight to her, and everything is on one level. But men, we got compartments. So there's things we put in room A, there's things we put in room B, there's things we put in room C. And when we are in one of those rooms, we're not being affected by what's going on in the other rooms. Our wives don't have that luxury. Like they
always affect everything else.
Right. You know, that's like a part of this table being on fire. And we being told by the crew, just don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Like that's straight. That is half it. And it's like, we trying to pretend like this thing ain't on fire, bro. And I feel like men don't understand, like that's what women are dealing with in their anxieties. They're not trying to be ungrateful. They're not trying to be a nag. They're literally just trying to communicate like, hey, I don't have the ability to disconnect from this like you. So what's the solution for men? Lean in. Lean into that emotionality, coming back to being strategically weak, right? Lean, don't be afraid to encourage that emotionality in your woman. And I know I get hated for that, right? Because it seems like it's emotional suicide.
Yep.
But if we are married and two become one, I have to learn how to help myself through helping my wife. So if I don't help her deal with her anxiety on Monday, that beast will bloom into a 3-headed Cerberus on Wednesday. And I rather deal with it in a puppy phase as opposed to dealing with that mother monster, because that ain't no joke to kill.
Yeah. And like you talk about validating, right? And giving your wife or spouse that validation, like that's a real thing, right? Because when Sharice and I first started dating, and like we would get into like disagreements and arguments and stuff, she would go to, this is the end of our relationship. Like literally, that's the first place she used to go.
Yeah.
And it was so weird to me, because to me it's like, so us having one disagreement, one argument, you think that's the end of the relationship. So when I realized like that was the her expectation coming out of like a disagreement or argument, like I would literally tell her like, bro, you ain't have to worry about us not being together. Like we still could be together after this. We just having a disagreement or like whatever it is, right? And whatever exchanges we have, whether be it good or bad, it ain't the end of us, right? It's just us getting through this patch of the relationship. And like that validation gradually helped her to be able to go sleep at night and not be anxious because she ain't sure how tomorrow could look, right? Because it's like, okay, I don't have to worry about him like not wanting to be in a relationship with me the next day just because we had a disagreement the day before. And so like that validation allowed her to learn, right? To even push past her discomfort and get to the point where it's like, okay, this is just something me going through and we're going to get to it.
Yeah. And, validation literally is just saying, hey, I see your experience. You could validate a person and not necessarily even agree with a person. A lot of men think that they're one and the same. Like if I validate you, that means that I am in agreement with what it is that's happening.
Right.
That's not always true. If you need understanding to validate, then you've missed it. Right? If I have to understand my wife before I validate my wife, then my wife will never get validated. Because in my male mind, like, why are you doing that? Like, why that make sense to you? Like, you wanted to find the red color crayon. And so your way in finding the red color crayon was to just dump all the crayons on the floor. So me thinking logically, why you just didn't look for it?
Yeah.
It's not understanding before validation. It's validation so that we can understand.
Yeah.
And validation is a key to so much understanding in relationships that I think we neglect because we don't know how to be present in that vulnerable space. We don't know as men how to endure seeing our wives cry while they're venting and understanding that that's okay in this moment. We feel like we need to solve that problem. And many times we don't. We just need to hear it.
That's good. That's good. Anything else, babe? You good?
For now, yeah.
Okay. All right. So I would tackle another thing we spoke on the last pod, right? So we spoke about, well, I introduced the idea of like 80-20, right?
Yeah.
And it being, you finding 80% of what you like or look for or would deem good, right, in the opposite sex or the person that you're interested in. But there's that 20% that, ain't what you want, but you could work with that because the percentage is kind of fine. And then you introduce the 60-40,
right,
to where it's now that percentage kind of went separate ways, right? So it decreased to, hey, if you could find 60%, that's good, and then that 40%.
Right.
I termed it like the 40% is your project, right? And there was some of the responses that I got was like, why would anyone want to take on a project?
Yeah.
Or why should a female feel like a project, right? And, the point wasn't for it to be a project in a sense, but it was to look on the other side and saying, hey, if you can find 60% in someone that is good, right, that you're looking for,
right,
you can assist or help develop that 40% that you think needs work. And that's not saying that they're the only individual in a relationship that needs work, right? We all need work. We all need to be continually developing ourselves. But that 40% is a, quote unquote, a project that you can start to refine and kind of show this individual like, hey, here's a better mindset for you to have. Here's a different perspective, right? Here's a better, a different way. I shouldn't say better, but a different way that you can look at this or do this that can get you to the same or to a better position, than you were before. So it's kind of, let's talk about that 40%. It not all being negative, right? That's what they're trying to get at, right? Because some of the responses was just like, why I got to be a project? Why I got to be 40%? Why? And then man was like, why I have to take on a project? Why can't I get something that's, pretty much where I want it to be?
I mean, I understand it. I understand people's perception of that, right? But let's frame it as a range. Mm-hmm. Let's say on the bad days, we dip down to 60-40. On an average day, we maintain it at 80-20. Mm-hmm. But then on the days where we really percolating good and the harmony is there and we feel so compatible, we bump it all the way up to 90-10. Mm-hmm. And it's like, we're not static in that, right? Like there are some days where I'm really on my chores. Mm-hmm. Like I taking out the garbage on time, bro. She ain't got to tell me nothing. I washing the pubic hair out the tub. Like literally, I on it. Yeah. And then there's days when I'm distracted. There's days when I forget. When I don't put the cap back on the water jug, right? Or I'm leaving my gym clothes to kind of hang on the sink for too long. Mm-hmm. And we just have an understanding like we go through things. But that 40% or that 20% that we were talking about, I think we stand a better chance when we learn to accept people as packages. Because packages mean that there are elements in this that I like and elements that I don't like. Mm-hmm. Like I got a fruit basket the other day for speaking at an event. And I love strawberries. I love bananas. But there's some melons in there, bro. That's just a complete turn off for me. I mean, like the flies having a field day on that, bro. Like, I can't reject the package because there's an element of it that I don't like. Mm. Quite similarly, I also don't want to buy a big package just for the strawberries. No. So it's understanding that people are more than just how they make us feel. Mm. I had to learn that my wife is more than just how she made me feel. Because men tend to box their women up according to how they make them feel. So I love you as long as you treat me right and making me feel good. But the minute you're not making me feel like how I want to feel, what's wrong with you? You don't know what kind of man you got it. You know how many women would be dying to be in your position? And I'm like, why are we limiting our women to just how we feel so selfishly all the time? Yeah. I think it should be bigger than that.
That kind of reminds me of something your dad once said. Loving with conditions, like I love you, but
I was just gonna mention that's the because effect, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Like I love you because I love you. If you like all of this cause and effect. If someone could say, I love you because whatever coming after that because is a level of limitation,
right?
See. Because if you remove that, then is the love no longer there?
Right.
All right. So loving without limits, right? Loving without condition, right? That's what it's supposed to be. Like I love you in spite of, right? I love you even if you don't X, Y, Z. So it's the conditions that we sometimes place on relationships as men, and saying or women, and saying, I like being with this person or I love being with this person because they make me feel this way or they do this or do that. And removing those conditions is when we get to the point where we are at a truer sense of like love from a relational standpoint.
Bro, that's so profound, right? Because if we take the suggestion that love is conditional, it means the only time I show love is when it's safe to do so. Yep. Right? When I get a guarantee of return or when I get a guarantee that this is going to be given back to me in the same way or better. Mm-hmm. But that also means that we're trying to frame love as though it's not a dangerous thing sometimes. Mm-hmm. Like people, we've glamorized and Hollywood has made love out to be this feel-good, nice thing all the time. Mm-hmm. But love is literally about choosing to be inconvenienced by the needs of what I say I love, whether it's a person, a place, or a thing. And being inconvenienced by what something needs means understanding that I may not always have the ability organically to meet that need, but it's still there. So sometimes that means I have to learn. Sometimes I mean I have to sit in front of people who can help me develop those talents or those skills. Because it not coming naturally to me still doesn't change the need. Like if my wife wants physical touch, and physical touch is not something natural to me, bro, I got to choose the inconvenience of learning how to do that. And I feel like so many people like to be rigid. Like this ain't me. You know, I ain't grow up that way. Like me or love me, hate me or love me. And it's like, that's cool when you single.
Babe, remember them days?
Oh.
Oh, Lord.
When I used to say that?
It was like that?
Yeah, and I was
learn,
I was going to say too, like love isn't static. Like Harrison says, one day is 60-40, one day is 80-20. Because we are growing and evolving as humans, we're not going to stay the same. So what we accept or what we love shifts. And if you love that person, I mean, you have to love the whole person.
No condition. Nah, that's real.
Well, you got yourself a wife there.
Like, hey, plenty conversations, plenty
Growth.
discussions. Plenty growth
That's good.
on both sides.
Good.
Sides.
It's good.
No, I like that though. I like that unconditional.
Mm-hmm.
At least as best we can. Right?
As best we could. Yeah, like, we trying.
So I want to talk about toxic traits.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So, I'm gonna be a little honest in this one here, right? So, the meme. There's this meme, old meme, but still relevant, where there's a Kermit in a black hood and a Kermit in a white hood, right?
Timeless. Yeah.
So Angel Kermit. No, I would say Angel.
Goodbye.
Good Kermit, bad Kermit. There you go.
Right.
I'm saying. Yeah. So, one of my toxic traits used to be, if I had something I wanted to communicate to Sharice, and I knew that communicating or saying what it is that I wanted to say would either cause an argument, cause a disagreement, or cause something, right?
Yeah.
And I would kind of tell myself, like, this ain't really that big of a deal or whatever. Like, that's, you'll be fine if you didn't address this issue. White hood Kermit or good Kermit would be like, yeah, bro, like, don't do that. Like, go the easy way out. Like, just avoid, because it's not necessary. It ain't like one of these conversations you have to have. Dark side Kermit, nah, bro. F that. Go right in and say exactly what it is we need to say. And more times than not, I would lean more to like dark Kermit side, right? And say whatever it is I wanted to say. And honestly, it would lead to an argument or disagreement or whatever. And I matured, thankfully matured to the point where it's like, okay, that conversation don't even make sense or is necessary, right?
Right.
I can allow that to go or figure out a better way to maybe address it, right? So that's one of my toxic traits. One of my toxic traits was, having these conversations, unnecessary conversations, at times when it just wasn't necessary to have, and the way that I approached it, right?
Yeah.
So how, can you identify or name, right, some toxic traits that you're aware of from a male perspective, for the most part, right? And how best can men avoid or counter those traits?
Bro, I see a good Kermit, bad Kermit, and I raise you Mr. Pivot. That's my badge rate, right? Even when I'm wrong, I ain't all the way wrong, though. And let me tell you why I ain't all the way wrong. You know that kind of way? It's like my stoplights never have red. It's just green and then yellow for a little bit and then back to green. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, there were times I had to learn, like, Harrison, just shut the hell up.
Mm-hmm.
You wrong, bro. Like, in your intentions, you trying to get this person to see that what you were motivated by was pure, or the reasons behind why you was doing what you was doing was good. You just ain't know why yet, so let me help you understand it.
Yeah.
And it's like, life ain't that fair.
Yeah.
Like, my actions are literally causing an effect. And sometimes I just need to end my sentence with a full stop.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if my life had to be an essay, all you see is commas.
Mm-hmm.
Just run on sentences like, we need to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that it's not about winning. It's not about having to be right. It's about seeing that we're on the same team.
Mm-hmm.
So if my wife says she loved me, right? as hard as this may be, bro, everything that comes out of her mouth comes out in consideration of me. So even though I feel like that sting, I have to remember this woman loved me. So if she loved me and she's saying this to me, there has to be some merit in what's going on here, right? So I think it's understanding that we have a desire as human beings to want it to be our day. Like, we want to have the soapbox. Like, I want to have the last say. Like, I want to hit my point home and, like, you shut down. Like, the logic's so airtight. Like, you can't say nothing.
Yeah.
We want men.
Yeah.
But you could be happy and you could be winning in marriage while totally failing at marriage, too.
You could be happy and winning and failing at the same time.
You could be winning on your point.
Oh, got you.
Right?
Okay.
And failing in marriage.
Got you.
And it's like, okay, you win that point now. What?
Mm.
Like, that's still the woman you got to sleep with.
Yeah.
Like, that's the woman who got to cook for you, bro. Like, be mindful. She got access to you in ways nobody else does, right? Like, yeah, I'm trying to say our wives can kill us. But I'm just saying, like, if I got to come back home to you and I got to see you again and we got to interact and for the sake of our child, we have to be an example of how healthy adults are supposed to interact. Then we got to learn how to not win. I call it the art of second place. When I can fight for second place, that means first place is reserved for you. So you don't feel like you got to fight to prove things to me. That space is here. If you telling me you angry, I'm receiving you in that. If you telling me that this is your worst day ever, and your worst day ever happens to be Subway running out of your favorite bread,
Yeah.
it's like, well, I got to receive, like, that's a bad day for you. Even though it may not make sense for me. I got to receive that, right? And I think instead of judging why someone's feeling what they're feeling, we need to learn to just receive one another on the fact that we feeling this. So I think one of the ways men can kind of deal with those kind of toxic traits is remembering we're not at war with each other. When you with your boys, yeah, man, you could debate, you could get off. But when you with your wife, you got to learn how to not win.
But I ain't gonna lie, that's what I wanted to say. You got to not win sometimes.
That's what it is, babe.
That is absolutely hard for men, bro.
It's difficult.
I feel you, though.
Because our pride is on the line.
Yeah.
Like, we define ourselves so much by what we produce in the world. And I ain't doing all of this for second place. Like, silver medal is cool. But that goal looking at me, and I want that. And so sometimes it triggers that part in us where it's like, I have to win for the sake of my competence. I have to win because this is so deeply connected to my worldview of masculinity. But we have to recognize that sometimes our definitions are keeping us enslaved to a lot of dysfunctional habits, bro. And we can't be afraid to redefine them. I remember vividly, babe, being like in grade 9 when Raiders used to kind of run them all. Me being bright, like, I ain't no gangster, bro. I went to Kingsway. Like, you don't know our situation with the pool. Like, it's been a long
That pool there, yeah?
But I don't know. I don't know what happened to the money. I don't know what happened to the cookie fund to be determined. And it's like, I remember myself feeling like I needed to bolster up who I was to give this image of strength. Because at that particular time, my worldview of masculinity was, who's the hottest, right? It wasn't me. But it's like, that was my definition. And then it kind of evolved into who making the most money, right? Like those markers of success, like the kind of car you drive in, the kind of things you wearing, the brands. And now manhood for me is like legacy. Like, I want to give my daughter the opportunity to say, that's my daddy. I want to give my daughter an opportunity to say, well, let me tell you about what my daddies do. And I'm thinking, like, I can't give that to her if my ego in the way. So it's learning that there are some things I can do on my own. There's some things I need my wife for. And together we are more formidable than being separated.
So do you always settle for second place?
No. But there's time where the foot got to get put down.
Okay.
And it's like, I only do that when I feel like the principle is missed.
Got you.
So if the principle is received, then I don't care about the nuances. Like, if we say chicken, I don't care where we get the chicken from. Or if we say beef, I don't care where we get the beef from. But if I say beef, and you ain't see that I said beef, then I have to make sure you understand it's beef. That kind of way. And sometimes you could be hated for that.
Yep.
Sometimes you're not going to be liked. But I think a real man of integrity and character welcomes that kind of conflict because the principle demands it. In my mind, right? value determines inconvenience. So if I say that this thing is valuable to me, I have to be able to demonstrate where I'm being inconvenienced by it. I can't say I want a good summer body if I'm not being inconvenienced by my diet and the workouts. I can't say that I want to improve as a man if I'm not choosing to be inconvenienced by learning through humility, right? So if I say that I love my wife, I have to learn to be inconvenienced by what she needs. And she, I'm hoping, is going to return that to me as well, because we made a commitment together of our own free will.
Oh, I like that. I like that. So second place is okay. Second place is okay. Hey,
Ain't no bad. But sometimes you got to touch
I was
gold.
going to say it hot, but
Yeah.
got to get your goal every now and again. The second place is fine. Nah, bro, I like that. And I think again, toxic traits is popular, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not let me say popular. It's prevalent in both men and women.
Sure.
It's something that we all go through, right? So this brings me to my next question.
Okay.
Do you think that men and women just like bad treatment? Like, why do we sometimes tend to stay in bad relationships or relationships that we know aren't for us, isn't doing us any good, but we just, for some reason, like we just stay there?
Do you feel like there's more to life than what you're experiencing? That deep down, you're meant for something greater? It's time to stop wondering and start discovering. At the Monroe Institute of Leadership, we believe every person carries a unique purpose, a calling designed specifically for you. Our transformative courses, Discover Purpose and Unlock Your Potential, are crafted to help you uncover that purpose and equip you with the tools to step confidently into your destiny. These powerful courses are for leaders, entrepreneurs, students, and visionaries like you. Through proven principles and actionable insights, you will clarify your vision and set bold goals. You will identify your strengths and passions. You will overcome the barriers holding you back, and you will step boldly into your God-given potential. Our expert facilitators draw from timeless and tested principles, blending practical strategies with kingdom truths to empower you to lead a life of purpose, impact, and transformation. The world needs what you have to offer. Don't let another day pass without unlocking the greatness within you. Visit our website, themill.org, and register today. The Monroe Institute of Leadership. Renew your mind and transform a generation.
So the therapist in me, right, wants to say firstly that it's because we don't really value ourselves in the way we need to. That if I really, for example, value that I have a Rolex watch, I'm not going to just put that Rolex watch any and everywhere. Like I got a special place for that in my watch box. I don't wear that any and everywhere, special occasions only. I even clean it with a certain kind of products because I value that. But a lot of times I think we don't really value ourselves in realistic ways. We value ourselves in theory. In the same way that people in theory say things like, well, I know God, like me and God got a personal relationship. And then you look at the fruit of their life and it's like, but is God in the room with us? Yeah. Like where it is. Yeah. Like, and I ain't trying to judge you on that, but it's like, we wear God as a brand, but we don't live with God in us as a lifestyle. So there are certain things that will reflect in your life when you make room for it. And so I think because a lot of people don't really value themselves in the way that they need to, and they're also afraid to address that, they just want to align with what self-love looks like, but they don't want to really dive into what self-love really means. Because if I say I love myself, right, and I want chicken in the bag, and I know I got a cholesterol issue, loving myself in that moment is saying no. Now, I don't want to say no. Saying no don't feel good. What would really feel good is if I indulged in what I wanted. But love is not a feeling. Love is literally the observation of what is valuable and then creating boundaries around that so you can protect you from yourself. So that's the first thing. That's the first thing that came to my mind when I think about why do people endure bad treatment. Now, the second thing, I think it's exciting.
The thrill.
Yeah, man. I remember my time on the road and dealing with some gals who head was a little crap. And boy, I ain't gonna lie. Them Christian girls in the church wasn't making me feel like that.
Like really,
You know, you pulling up to my house like this meaningful. You know, my mommy and daddy home trying to rest and you just blowing the horn like, yeah, this love. That's it. You know,
it's gotta be it.
It's gotta be it, man. Because I think in that bad treatment, you feel like the center of their world.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so valuable to you. Like, look what you going through because of me.
Yeah.
And I think people get off on that.
Mm.
But healthy is boring sometimes.
Yep.
Right? And I think so many people in our generation don't even understand, like, we're rejecting a lot of what healthy is. Mm-hmm. We expect our relationships to be filled with passion 24/7. We're supposed to be living like Bonnie and Clyde. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't be James Bond all the time. Mm-hmm. Like, sometimes you got to be Bob. Mm-hmm. No offense to Bobs. It's like, you know, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So it's also understanding that because we don't live a life that's really fulfilling, we don't chase our dreams, we don't chase our passions, we don't chase our purpose, we're trying to offset that void with drama. Yeah. And it's so easy to find that in people. Yeah. So I feel like those are my top 2 reasons why people endure bad treatment.
Mm. So someone who doesn't value themselves.
Yeah.
What are ways, or maybe just one way, that you would encourage them to start increasing their self-value?
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting concept. So I usually take the approach that we don't have control over our value. It's set at a certain level. We have it, but can we see it? Mm. Right? The best we can do as humans is we can change our perception of value. Right? Going back to the Rolex watch. I can tell you this is a Rolex, and you can say, by Harrison, that's the ugliest watch I ever seen. Mm. Like, I'll never invest that kind of money in a Rolex. That's your perception. But your perception doesn't change the fact that there's still a $20,000 Rolex watch. A Daytona at that. You don't know what I'm talking about, right? So our perception of value doesn't change our value. Me saying that that person isn't pretty, or that person isn't successful, or that person isn't something, that doesn't change the value that they were born with. So I feel like value is static. But the noise in life, the distractions in life, the traumas we incur in life, it almost makes the window a little opaque. Mm-hmm. So we're not seeing our value in the way we need to really be seeing it. Mm-hmm. So I think the work is learning how to clear up that window so we can see more of our value.
And how do we clear up the window? Like, just, you know, some practical ways we could do that.
Yeah, man, I think by understanding that as a human being, you have rights to your feelings, your thoughts. You have rights to your perceptions. You have rights to your goals. You have rights to your life. I think when you understand that you are valuable in that sense, it gives you permission to let more of your essence show up, right? I remember this one time I was dating a gal, right? Before Brittany. And I feel like I won her over on false pretenses. I feel like I was trying really hard to be mysterious. I was trying really hard to be like that kind of guy where it's like like you don't know what's going on. And I got her like that. But the problem is I had to keep that up. That ain't me.
That hard.
Like I jokey. You know what I mean? I like to crack jokes. I like to get off. And so me bringing more of Harrison's essence to the table started working against me because I didn't begin with accepting that me being me was okay. So it's like when you are yourself, people rejecting you and being yourself, they're doing you a favor. Because that simply means that dying your crowd, dying your person, dying your people. So when you can learn to kind of give yourself permission to let the essence of who you are show up, and then you can get familiar with what that sounds like, with what that looks like, it now becomes easier to present that to the world because you've already spent so much quality time with it. So now it's, instead of me trying to fit into a space I don't belong, it's me fitting in right where I need to be. Because this is me being me.
Yeah. No, I like that. And man, you see it all the time, right? I see so many men, women included, right? Who, like you said, I think it's almost, I'd say 90% centered around like value. Because if you value yourself, like you're not gonna put up with or accept, you know, different things or treatment from others, right?
Real talk.
And that's speaking not just relationships, right? That's speaking your professional life, your spiritual life, and a number of different areas in your life, right? If you hold a certain value to yourself, you're gonna allow that value to shine in all of those areas, and not just, not let society dictate, hey, what that value should be.
Right. And, we say that a lot of times in conversations, right? Like, don't let society dictate what you should and should not be. But, like, I think we minimize, like, society rewards you. You do what it says. Like, we get rewarded, bro, when we don't cry. We get rewarded when we bring it in that corn. Like, we get rewarded for being the strongest in the gym, or being the fastest in high school. Like, you get rewards for that, like, quite literally. And when you're coming from a background where being rewarded for something is uncommon, it's hard to say no to what society is suggesting. Because a lot of men trapped in that. Like, we hear a narrative all the time. Like, carve your own path. Don't be afraid to be you. But what happens when you don't have tangible experiences with that? Now, quite literally, my value comes from how effective I am in doing what society is saying.
Right.
AKA the Renaissance man.
Right.
It's like I work out, I'm married, I'm making money, I just give back, all while still being happy and smiling. Like, I think every man has a kind of dream where he could do all things. But literally, we downplay a lot the influence that society has on why we do what we do, bro.
And that's all aspects of our lives, like, not just relationships. I mean, society has, I call it brainwash, right? They have brainwashed us into thinking, like, we have to put limitations on our development from a skill standpoint, our professional life, what success should look like, how successful we could be, how we should feel with our success. It's just so many barriers that we have been placed in, or that have been placed around us as human beings and individuals that live in this world and different aspects of the world, where, sometimes something that should feel normal to us almost feels like a bad thing.
Real talk.
Where, like, I feel like I should like this feeling, I should feel good about this, but society doesn't allow me to, because of my background or my skin color, or, whatever these metrics are that they use to measure.
Yeah.
You want to say something?
Yeah, going back to the bad relationship. How much of that is learned behavior based on where you come from, seeing your parents go through certain situations, seeing the people around you go through certain situations? Because I know I've known people who just say, for marriage. Some people don't want marriage because they've never seen a good, healthy marriage. So for them, they don't want that. So how many people are just not, they haven't seen a good example, or someone hasn't put that value in them for them to know that they are valuable, more valuable than what they are accepting?
It's high, man, Sharice, because I think a lot of people, they see examples of it around them, but like you said, they don't have personal experiences with it. Like, I know a lot of men who want to be good husbands, but they only watch their daddy cheat. They only watch their daddy be physical with their mother. And so they have the intention, they have the heart there, but they don't have the skills. And I feel like this is why community is so important, bro. Because there are men who are in need of things beyond my personal family, beyond my personal circle, who will never have access to this if we don't do what it is we need to do. And I think it was your dad who wrote in the book, I don't remember which one it was, but there are people out there who need us to kind of walk into our purpose, and they don't even realize that they need that yet. We don't even realize that they need that yet. And it speaks to how man gotta help man. I could only be as effective as my brother's keeper, because who can have my back?
Right.
And it's like, if these are the men that my daughter got to come up and date, I'm just thinking, like, it really makes sense if I can give back now, while the window is still open, to kind of show and expose people, like, listen, there is a way we can learn this. There is a way you can curve that behavior. This isn't just some kind of fiction novel. Like, this is real life. And here are the steps in which you can go about getting. So I feel like a lot of times people who had it good, we could be a little selfish with that, and we could hoard it instead of really using that good that we have experienced and now taking on the work of conveying that to the world. Sometimes you could be hated for it. Sometimes you open up yourself to criticisms. You open up yourself to a lot of commentary. And so it isn't always an easy thing to do. But I feel like if more men were able to kind of lead that shift in their personal spaces, that's less burden on any one man to have to do so much at one time.
No, I like that. And I think that segues us right into the last topic I wanted to cover, right? And that's generational curses.
Yeah.
So, what Sharice saying, like, if this is an environment that you grew up in,
Right.
you've kind of been conditioned to think like this is normal or this is how it should be or, whatnot. So, first of all, like, do you believe in generational curses? And then how can we maybe combat it a bit and change the trajectory of, us being the offspring of, this person who has been conditioned to think or has made these choices that has caused the family or, our line, right? Our heritage to face the things that we've been facing over the years. How do me as the new generation, like how can I combat those demons, if you will?
Yeah. I think generational curses exist in so many different forms.
Mm-hmm.
You got the genetic generational curses, things that are passed on through DNA, like sickle cell disease, or like certain just character traits, right? We even know like the BRCA gene can follow through women and certain generations too. Through no fault of your own, you could literally be faced with a condition that you now have to deal with, right? So we know that generational things of that nature can pass through the line genetically. Then we know behaviorally, like there are patterns of how we do things in certain families that continue to be passed on to next generations. We don't call it a generational curse when it's working for the good. But what happens when those patterns of how we operate contributes to bad? Like what happens if I come from a line of men who turn to alcoholism or who turn to extreme forms of escapism to deal with stress? I'm watching that. I'm hearing that grow up. Naturally, what's going to happen to me when I get into the hot seat, when I walk into a relationship? That's familiar to me, right?
We do the same thing.
So because it's familiar, it's easier to reach out to, right? Like I have never seen anybody do hardcore drugs at any particular time. So if I had to literally watch someone sniff a line of coke, that would blow my mind, bro.
Yeah.
But I can talk about how easy it was to see members of my family reach for alcohol, how it was normalized as a part of just partying. So if push ever came to shove for me, that would be an easier thing to reach towards as opposed to hardcore drugs. So we know that generational curses could also exist behaviorally. And then, of course, the one that I think we in this country talk about a lot with that is spiritually. We know that there's a lot of chains and there's a lot of things I think that need to be broken with fasting and prayer. Things that we really have to go to war on spiritually in the other realm. So we consider all of those things, right? As an individual who says that they want to break a generational curse, you have to understand that you are likely to face the same things that the generations before you did. But you're now tasked with having to respond to them differently, right? So my grandfather got an opportunity to cheat, and he cheated. My father got an opportunity to cheat, and he cheated. I'm going to get an opportunity to cheat. What choice will I make when I get that opportunity? You don't break generational curses by hoping I'm not faced with the same thing. You break generational curses by training yourself to know what am I going to do when that time comes. So the breaker of the generational curse doesn't get to benefit from the curse being broken. I'm giving that to my children.
Yeah, passing it on. Yep.
See, I don't want my child to have to wrestle with this. So I'm in therapy so I can learn coping mechanisms. I'm in therapy so that I can understand emotional intelligence. Because I don't want my daughter having to go through that same fight. I want that to be her normal when it wasn't a normal for me. I mean,
Yep.
Yeah.
No, got you. Boy, is mind deep. Yeah, because the breaker of generational curses don't get the opportunity to experience or to benefit from that generational curse being broken. It's passed on to the next generation.
Right.
And I mean, same could be said for like the vision carrier. Right, so most visionaries aren't able to see the vision come to pass. Right, it's for the next generation. But the visionary makes a decision to, hey, I can start this at this point. So I think it works the same way. Nah, man, that's dope. Hopefully, I wanted to speak specifically about that because, from our last conversation, there were some sub-conversations that came up around that.
Right.
And I think you did a good job kind of covering it in all aspects, right? From a behavioral standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint, and from a individual biological standpoint. There you go. Yes. So I hopefully this encourages someone out there, right? Who, like you're aware of, let's call it, you're aware of a generational curse that is in your blood, in your family line, anything along those areas. But you're making a decision, a conscious decision to say, I'm going to break this curse. I am going to, if it's a spiritual thing, I'm going to dedicate time for fasting and praying, right? If it's a behavioral thing, like I'm going to make this conscious decision to, not do this or not continue this, right?
Right.
Biologically, there's some limitations to that, right? Because a lot of it is out of our control. But managing it the best we can,
sure.
I think is the best call to action. But yeah, man, thank you, man. This has been an even more insightful conversation. Like just speaking from a male perspective, right? 2 men, 4 men, but to everyone, right? So we all can get a good understanding of what men face in relationships. Our challenges, our highs and lows. The way we do things, even when we're not happy. All of that entails, us being able to be who we are as men. And encouraging each other, right? And just allowing the space for men to be able to be honest and open, regardless of who's in the room.
And bro, if I could pull a couple of flowers out of that bouquet and give them back to you, and by default your wife, the decision to be so vulnerable, in like previous episodes, the decision to kind of lead through example. Like instead of just making this a thing we talk about in the meta, bringing it down to like reality.
Yeah, real time. Yep.
Like we living through this, we walking through this. That's literally the example of what it is me and you've been talking about here today.
Mm-hmm.
So the courage, the grit, the vision to actually do that, bro. Thank you.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Well, let's once again leave the audience with your contact. Someone may want to reach out, receive some help, some therapy, some encouragement, just talk about the different ways people can get in contact with you.
Yeah, man, definitely. If you want to reach out on social media, I'm on all platforms. Well, mainly Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, now known as X. Once you type in Harrison Thompson, my name will pop up. My hub of operation is Facebook. You can reach out to me, Harrison Thompson Official, there. If you want to get a direct line into the office, you can contact us at 356-798-304. I do sessions Monday through Saturday, beginning at about 10 a.m., ending generally around 5 to 6 p.m. in the night.
Okay. All right, cool, man. So I would encourage you guys to, reach out to Harrison. Even if you just want to have a conversation, you ain't sure what you want to talk about, if you ain't sure if you need, any form of therapy, do yourself a favor and at least start with a session, right? Start someplace. And I promise you that one session will open your eyes to you realizing that, this is something that I really need a bit.
Well, the best time to get therapy is when you don't need it.
And you said that earlier in this conversation and in our last conversation, right? Most people wait until something happens,
That's right,
to be like, I want to go to therapy.
That's right.
But it's it's better to be proactive in trying to avoid the mishaps, right? And attacking it as early as you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Therapy works regardless of when you start, but if you get ahead of that, bro, all the better.
Got you. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate you coming on.
My pleasure,
on the pod again.
My pleasure, man.
So that brings us to the portion of the pod where I want to leave with you a milestone. Milestone for today stems from something that I guess Harrison said. It is okay to come in second place. As men, we don't always have to be right. We don't always have to be in front. We don't always have to be the winner, right? Although it's good to win sometimes and it's good to be right, at times, there are times where we have to condition ourselves to be okay with coming in second, especially when it involves the ones that we love the most. So, take that to heart. Try to develop practical steps where we can conditionally be okay with coming in second, because us choosing others over ourselves or our loved one over ourselves can really catapult us as individuals and the relationships that we are a part of to a much higher plane. So that's what I wanted to leave with you today. All right. So that brings us to the end of this pod. Harrison, thanks again for joining us, man. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
As always, I don't want this to be the last time. We definitely have to continue these conversations. I think they're worthwhile. And, next time we could probably have a round table of men having the same conversation. I think that'd be dope.
I like it.
All right, man.
I like it.
Well, as always, the vision and goal of this podcast is to entertain, educate, and elevate you miles high above your fears, your doubts, and any limitations that you may think exist. Always knowing that those limitations only exist in your mind. All right, so until next time, you guys stay blessed.